Hi, and welcome to the My Dog Made Me Do It Naturally podcast. I am your host, Kat Jepson, a canine nutritionist with an innate obsession with dogs and the natural ways in which we are driven to live because of them. So, let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to the My Dog Made Me Do It Naturally podcast. I'm your host, Kat Jepson, and here with me today is Megan, dog mama to Maggie and Rosie. Hi, Megan. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi.
Hi. So Megan wants to discuss with us today how she kind of started fresh food feeding and also touch on how social media helped her in her natural feeding journey. And we're also going to touch on the pros and cons of social media in fresh food for dogs. So let's dive right in. So then, Megan, why don't we start with a little bit of an introduction? Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and Maggie and Rosie?
So I'm Megan. I have Maggie, who is a Rottweiler crossed with a Beagle. She's 4 years old, and she is the laziest dog you have ever met. And then we've got Rosie, who is a Rottweiler who is almost 18 months old, who is polar opposite, always on the go.
Oh, well, they both sound absolutely delicious. Now, Megan is, well, I should say you are on Instagram, but Maggie and Rosie have their own Instagram accounts, don't they? So yeah. I already know what they look like, and they are delicious. So what does your natural journey look like at the moment, and how did it start? How did you get into feeding fresh food for your fur babies?
So I think, because Maggie was our first dog, so we've had her 2.5 years now, and we've only had Rosie a couple of months. So it all started with Maggie originally. So I'd had dogs as a child and as a teenager at home, and obviously I wasn't really in charge of feeding them. It was all up to my parents, and they were literally just go to the shop, go to the supermarket, get a tin of food and some biscuits, and off the dog went. So I thought that's just what dogs ate. I thought that was it. Yeah. And speaking to like other friends and family members, their dogs just ate that as well. And then it wasn't until I joined Instagram until I saw dogs' bios saying things like raw fed, and like promoting different brands of fresh food, raw food. So I thought, hang on, what's all this about? And had a little go. Not gonna lie, Maggie isn't the greatest with like chunky raw food. She can turn her nose up at it, but I think that's because she didn't have the best diet when we first got her. So she's just got into a routine of the first 2 years of her life. She was just eating tinned food, and that is probably what she prefers. She doesn't know what's good for her and what's not. Whereas Rosie has always been raw fed. At her previous home, she was raw fed since they got her. So we've just kept that on with her. So we try and compromise Maggie's with lots of veg, and she loves fish. So we might mix up her food with fish quite often.
So do you feed Maggie and Rosie the same foods? No, you feed them different foods.
Yeah. So Rosie eats a lot more than Maggie as well, and Maggie's a bit Rosie's more of a grazer, whereas Maggie scoffs her food. So we have to watch the portion sizes and feed them separately, because once Maggie's finished, she's trying to eat Rosie's food. If you put Rosie's food in front of Maggie, she wouldn't eat it. She'd turn her nose up at it, don't like it. But because it's in Rosie's bowl, she'll want to try and have a bit of it.
It sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So how old was Maggie when did you rescue Maggie? Is Maggie from a rescue? Yeah.
She's not from a rescue. We rehomed her. So we've worked out through the powers of Instagram that we're her fifth home.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, we didn't know.
Oh, poor Maggie.
She's probably had about 5 different diets anyway.
Oh, I was gonna say.
But what was the question?
Well, no, I asked her how old she was when you got her.
Nearly 2.
Nearly 2. Okay, yeah, because I think dogs tend to sort of like learn their preference for food based on what they are fed when they are really young. So if she has been fed like really poor diets, which taste great to dogs because it's like their version of a McDonald's, basically. It's like
that's
kibble.
how we say it all the time. It's like if you opened up a tin in front of Maggie, she think it's like a takeaway.
My dogs are the same. But and I just think it sometimes it can be really hard to get them out of that. I remember when I first got Boris and Barney. Well, I got Boris first a couple of years before we got Barney. And I didn't know hardly anything about, well, I didn't know anything about raw feeding at that point. I used to give him pepperamis as treats, thinking that it was okay. And it wasn't until I learned about, well, that's really not okay, really, really not okay, that we started to change. But because Boris was used to eating the lower quality foods and the highly processed foods, I did really struggle to transition him onto raw. And only now in the past kind of 12 months has he started eating the full raw meaty bones, like the chicken necks.
Yeah.
Before he would only like eat the minces. So it's only now, and he will be 8 in April. So like it's took, so many years to get them used to it. But it's just taking that time. And then, they will always love the McDonald's like we do. But that's what we can do. Great. So how do you think feeding fresh food to your dogs has changed your life personally?
It's made me more aware of what I'm feeding them, because like I said in the past, I didn't know what was in dog food. I just put it in a bowl and gave it to them. It's made me more aware, and I've managed to look at signs and symptoms. So if I've noticed, say during summer, hay fever, Maggie's got gungy eyes. In the past, I probably would have just gone, don't know what that is. It's probably nothing, it's a dog. But now I'm noticing, okay, it's probably a bit of hay fever. I put this, that, and the other in a food, and then you can see the improvement, which is rewarding. Because at the end of the day, these dogs are like my children, they're like my little babies, and you do anything for them and try and keep them healthy.
Yeah, you do. And that is the same for a lot of people. And, it always has been, but I think even more so now, because I think a lot of people tend to have dogs over children these days as well. So that's where they're like, putting more effort into their dogs' meals than what they do their own.
Yeah. I find it fun as well. Like I'd never have gone to Morrison's and picked up some lamb hearts and
being excited to get home to chop them up and feed them to the dog. I know. I'm the same.
You get a delivery from online, and it's full of offal and loads of random bones, and like me and my husband are like, guess what animal this is from? Like playing a random game with each other and making up like doing DIY meals and making up like new recipes and things. It's fun, and I don't know what else I'd be doing with my Sunday afternoon. So,
well, why not? You see, I love that. So did you struggle at first when you started feeding fresh food to Maggie, I'm guessing, because Rosie has only just joined. So when you first started feeding fresh food to Maggie, was there anything in particular that you struggled with? Like, was there overwhelming amounts of information available, or, how did you navigate that?
So I'd say yes, there is a lot of information available, but for me, I wish I could do this with every aspect of my life, but I can't. I did it gradually, so I picked out little bits that I wanted to focus on at first, and then built it up from that. So I know that Maggie loves fish, so I started off like looking into fish and oily fish, why fresh fish is better than oil, like pre-made oils and things, and started with that, and then Maggie, thank God, loves fruit and veg, so moved on to fruit and veg, adding different types into the meals, like all different colors of the rainbow, blending them, freezing them. I just did it gradually, really, until I'd got all the different pieces of the jigsaw and put it all together.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you first start something, if you start small and then you get used to that small bit, you then start feeling a little bit more comfortable taking out like a bigger chunk of information and making that. And then before you know it, you've got the full bowl that you've pieced together yourself. So that is a great piece of advice. I think a lot of people do get overwhelmed when they think about fresh feeding for dogs, but it doesn't have to be that way. So that's really good. So did you consult with someone about which kind of fresh foods to feed, or did you sort of do your own research?
I did some of my own research online, but through the powers of Instagram, I've been very lucky to meet some great friends, which are all like-minded dog mums. And I think sometimes you can think that social media is very negative and very judgy. And don't get me wrong, some parts are, but I found that on this side of Instagram, with where the food is concerned and supplements and dogs' health, everyone has been so friendly and so helpful, and like there's literally no judgment. If you turned around and said, "Oh, my dog gets a tin from the supermarket 3 times a day," no one would judge you, but you'd ask for a bit of advice, and they're always there to help. So I think I'd say 80% of it has come from friends and advice from social media.
Oh, well, that's good to know. So that anybody that feels like they might be alone in it, they just need to have a little look around in the community. I do think that the Instagram community for dogs and their parents is absolutely amazing. Like having the pet shop, I mean, I've met so many dogs virtually. I've met so many dogs and their owners, and you do form great friendships. And I think when you find pet parents that are on their own fresh feeding journey, they themselves know how, controversial it can be and how difficult it can be to navigate. So I think that's why there is a lot of sort of non-judgmental attitudes out there. But don't get me wrong, there are some spaces within the online community that can be really, kind of judgy and aggressive and things like that. But as long as we don't pay attention to it and we just focus on our own path, then we should be okay. So it sounds like you've done okay navigating social media anyway.
I tried to.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole, isn't it? I think.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So has there been any downfalls on your fresh feeding journey? Like, has there been something you've tried and had to change, or any health problems risen from it?
I wouldn't say there's been any health problems. I think for me, it's I need to keep it up. If I work, because I work away from home quite often, so if I've gone away for 3 days and not prepped the food or left her husband in charge, it's hard to get back into the swing of things. And then if I'm getting like 9 o'clock at night, and the last thing I want to be doing is cutting up some liver and that. I think that's probably my weakness, is I'll get into a routine of proper prepping everything, and then I'll hit a brick wall and forget for a week, and then it's hard to get back onto it. But health wise, I've not noticed any problems. I think it's the hardest bit is like with the supplements, say, because Rosie's on supplements for her joints. It's keeping on top of that, because there's no point just doing it for 2 or 3 days and expecting miracles. You need to keep on top of it and keep the dosage of what's recommended, which in a big dog can often be quite a lot. So you're constantly having to order more and things like that. So I think that's probably one of the struggles, is being prepared.
Yeah, I think it is a big mental load really as well, isn't it? And I think that's why a lot of people tend to like the ready-made meals and things like that, because it is so much more convenient. But I mean, I prefer to do DIY because I like feeding different things. I like feeding them in chunks, and then the teeth get a good clean with the big raw meaty bones and things like that. But I do understand where ready-made raw comes into play. Like you say, when you get home, you've been working away, the last thing you want to be doing is chopping up a slimy beef liver, or if it's not even been out of the freezer, you've got an emergency situation where you're raiding the pantry for the tins of sardines and things like that. But prepping can be hard, and it is sometimes hard to stay organized. So do you prep yours? Do you do like a week in advance, or how do you do your prep?
I try to. At the weekend, I'll get everything out, go to the shop, prep everything, the blender's going, I'll make my little frozen veggie bites and everything. Tupperware is everywhere. But then once you've, it might take an hour to do it all on a Sunday afternoon, but then it's done for the week.
Yeah.
And then once you've done it, it's so easy. You just need to remember to take it out the freezer.
I know. And I think the first time you meal prep, you kind of like, oh, there's so much going on. I don't really know what I'm doing. But then every time you meal prep, the time it takes you to meal prep reduces. I think I did a 6-day meal prep the other day, and no word of a lie, it took me 15 minutes.
Yeah.
For Barney, because I do Barney's first, then I do Boris's, because Barney will eat the big chunks. He's a Boston Terrier, but he does like the big chunks. So I literally just have to chop it up a little bit for Barney. So his meal prep is sort of easy as pie at the minute. Boris, however, prefers them to be smaller. So his takes me a little more time. But I think once you get used to it, the quicker it gets. But yeah. I mean, an hour's not really long, is it, for the sake of just defrosting it during the week? So yeah. So what would you say is the best thing about your natural journey? What's the best thing that you have learned, or the aspect that you have learned the most from?
I think it's something that I can share with other people. So now I found myself, like, because some of my my dog mum friends that are watching me on Instagram on their personal accounts, their dogs don't have Instagram. They're just watching because they viewing Maggie and Rosie because they like to keep on top of it. They're asking me for advice now, and they're saying, "Oh, I want to feed my dog this. Can you give me any advice? Have you got any advice on this health problem that this dog's got and things like that?" Which is nice. So it's nice that I'm being able to share my knowledge, what the people have told me, and pass it on.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I think as well, if you are getting asked those questions, and like you say, if there is something that you're a little bit unsure of, you can then go to your community, your other fresh feeding community, and sort of get the information from them. And I think that is a wonderful way for things to start for people, because word of mouth is like one of the most powerful forms of communication. And we trust those that we know, and once you start doing something and shouting about it, that's when other people tend to catch on. So that's great. That means you're helping to inspire others to feed fresh food to their dogs. So well done for that. So is there anything you would say to other pet parents who may be struggling in starting to feed fresh foods to their dogs?
I'd just say, give it a go. Obviously, you've thought about it, so you want to give it a go. And you know that it's the best. You're obviously putting your dog's best intentions are for feeding fresh. So because you've had that thought, act on it and give it a go. Start small, do your research, ask around. Generally, if people have got it on their Instagram that's what they're doing, I reckon they'll offer advice and they'll offer help. And if they don't, they'll point you in the direction too.
Yeah.
So I think give it a go. Like, start small and work your way up, and feed the dog in front of you. That's what I've been told a million times, and I think that's one of the best pieces of information that I've ever had. So there's loads online about weights. Feed your dog this because you've got this type of dog, and feed your dog this amount of food because they're this weight and they're this breed. But I think feed the dog in front of you. If your dog's not eating at all because it's full, cut it down. And if every dog's different. So if your dog's got certain health problems, you're going to feed for that. I think just trust your gut. You know your dog better than anyone. So
it's true. That's a lovely bit of information. Thank you for sharing that. I do. And feed the dog in front of you is it has to be the ultimate saying in feeding dogs, basically, because I mean, yourself, you have 2 dogs who are different. They eat different meals. They eat different amounts of food. And if you'd have gone based on their breed and based on their weight or their average weight of the breed, then you might be overfeeding or underfeeding that dog. So the key point is to start at the 2.5% of their body weight, which is what I would do. I would start at 2.5% of their body weight, see how they go for a few weeks. If they're too skinny, put some more food in. If they're all right, keep it as it is. If they're putting too much weight on, reduce it some more. And that's all you need to do. You just need to learn how to kind of navigate and how to see if your dog is sort of like skinny or fat, basically.
And don't beat yourself up about it, because I think sometimes you can get a bit, why is my dog not eating that? I've just spent all Sunday afternoon prepping that. You will eat it. Just don't take it personally, and don't take it to heart. Like, people put food in front of me and I'm like, I don't want to eat that.
I know, especially if their dogs have been fed a different diet for a long time, or even just for a short time if they've been fed it since a puppy. You know, dogs, they like what they know, and sometimes you might even only be able to add the smallest piece of like raw food to their bowl for a few weeks till they start eating it, and then increasing it. But it's just having that patience and bearing with your dog. Let your dog navigate the way, and let them tell you when it's ready. Unless you just do a cold turkey switch, which is what I did with mine. I just switched them cold turkey. It was
literally.
Literally. I just stopped feeding the rubbish food one day and started with the raw, and that was it. I mean, Barney was on raw from when he came home, so he's always been raw fed. And you can tell, because he's such a strong dog. Like, he's just so muscular for a Boston Terrier. I mean, they're only skinny little doggies anyway, but you can tell he's been raw fed all his life. Boris, not so much, but yeah. So just to touch on the bits about social media. So you said that you got a lot of support from your social media, from the raw feeding community, the fresh feeding community. So what would be, if you shall tell us, what are the pros of being on social media and being within the fresh food community for dogs?
So when I tell people that my dogs are on Instagram, they look at you as if you've lost the plot. Don't get me wrong, it sounds really sad that my dog's got an Instagram, but
it doesn't though. It doesn't. I think that you're going to get one of two responses when you say the statement. It's either going to go really well or
but when you explain to people, like, I've met so many friends through social media, and like-minded friends as well. Like, a lot of my best friends that are like my home friends, they asked me to go and do something on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. I'm like, I can't, because I've got the dogs. So I can only stay out a certain amount of time. I want to get home to my dogs. Whereas like the Instagram community, you've got everyone's got the same opinion. So everyone wants to do stuff with the dogs. So you go and meet people with the dogs.
Yeah. And
everybody has the same problems with the dogs. Like the group chats that I'm in, I'll wake up in the morning, it'll be, my dog's balls are red and itchy. What do I do? And it's like, there's so many groups of people that can have those conversations, and there's and it's great because things have happened to my dogs that have been on the chat previously, and I scroll back up and go, they suggested that. That's great. Yeah. So I think from the friendships I've made, like all over the country, all different breeds of dogs, all like-minded people, it's just been great. And like I said, with the fresh feeding community, we'll all offer each other advice. If our dog's poos are hard one day, we're like, oh, have you tried this? Or get down to Morrison's, there's a special offer on hearts or something. If there's a special offer on an Instagram small business, we all help each other out and promote things. And if we see something that would work for another dog, we're like, have you seen this would work for your dog. It's just been like great. I've never met half of these people in real life, but I've got them as like my really good friends.
I think that's usually the case, isn't it? I know some of my best friends I've met through Instagram, through having a small business, and because I am quite antisocial normally. I just don't have time for real life friendships. That's my problem. It's just life is just far too busy, especially with human babies in the mix as well. Like, you think you're busy with dogs, wow, are you busy with human babies? But yeah, social media can be so empowering and inspiring and things like that, and I think it's great that people do share the stories, because sometimes if you do have someone who is quite introverted and doesn't really want to speak out, they might just watch from the sidelines, but they kind of feel that support, even though they're not joined in with it, if that makes sense. So I think that's another good thing about social media. So following that, what are the cons, do you think? In your personal experience, what have been the cons to your social media?
So there can be quite a lot of pressure to obviously on Instagram, you get followers, you post pictures. There's sometimes a lot of pressure to get X amount of followers, X amount of likes on your photos, and there can be quite a lot of competition going on with that. And also, like I said, it's a very, very small part of the dog community on Instagram, but there can be some judgment with what you're feeding your dogs, how you're training your dogs, what you dress your dogs in, and even sometimes now I'll feel judged, even that if I'm not being, I'll be sometimes like, oh, is this post a bit too weird to put on? Are people going to have something to say about this? And then sometimes I'll send it to other people and be like, oh, do you think I should say this or not? There is always that in the back of your mind, but I think that's just only natural and human, and you can't please everyone or every dog.
No, you definitely can't. And I know there's been things that I've posted, whether it's been on a business page. Well, to be fair, I am not really personally on social media much. Like, I used to have an account for the boys, but I just couldn't keep up with it. Not when I had the pet shop. It was basically just all pet shop. But there's been some things, and I think with fresh feeding especially, you do get some controversial topics, and you do get some really, rigid attitudes on you should do this and you should do that, and people just, if you don't do it this way, you're doing it wrong, which fair enough, people are entitled to their own opinion, but I think it's how you kind of receive those comments and receive that information that will make, depend on how it impacts you. Because I think if somebody puts a bit of a comment on one of my posts, so I'll read it and initially I'll think, what?
Yeah.
And then I'll give it an hour and then I'll be like, it's okay.
After every 20 positive comments you get, you might get one negative comment and you can't stop thinking about that negative comment. I know, but I always think as well, sometimes if a random mum put a photo of her kids in McDonald's on social media, would you comment saying, that's so bad for your kids, why are you feeding them that? Like, you wouldn't, would you?
Well, I think some people would, though. But those kind of people, that's what I mean. Yeah, there's always going to be some.
That's it. You just know they're them type of people. And you just need to do what's right for you. And I think that's another thing, like what's right for you at one moment in your life, and one even just one day of the week might not be right for you another day. Like one day they could get fed the most gourmet meal, which is like textbook perfect for these dogs. And then the next day you're like, I've got in at 9 o'clock at night, I've got nothing out the freezer, you're having a tin of sardines and liking it.
Yeah.
It's hit and miss, isn't it? And it is. I think that's what, and don't believe everything you see on Instagram. Sometimes you think these people are making these meals every single day for the dogs 3 times a day. They ain't. Like, everybody's human and everyone makes mistakes. So you're only putting the best ones on, aren't you? Most
of the time, yeah. I mean, I use the same licky mat plates. We use those every day. And I don't really put mine in a fancy order or anything like that. I just basically get it out of the tub, stick it on the plate. I mean, I don't know if I've got any pretty pictures of raw food on mine, or if I have, it's not something that I have done, because I'm more focused on the benefits of the food rather than how it looks. Barney doesn't care how it's placed on the bowl. He really doesn't care. Boris definitely doesn't care, because I mean, if I give Barney a big duck neck, he's going to drag it around the kitchen anyway while he's making his way through it. So he doesn't care.
Why do dogs do that?
I think it's just natural. It's natural. They're trying to take it to a safe place where they can concentrate 100% on chewing that that like that raw meaty bone or that piece of food, where they're not going to be disturbed by anybody else. Because like in the wild, there would be a group of them all feeding off the same carcass or the same kill and things like that. So they'd probably take a piece of it and be like, right, this is mine. I'm going over here. Nobody's taking this. This is mine. Which is why when you feed them raw meaty bones and stuff, they can be quite resource guardish when they do it, because they're like, oh my God, this is amazing food. I'm keeping it. It's mine. But as well, because it takes a lot of effort to chew, like if you feed Rosie the big chunks, is it? Yeah. So if you've ever like watched a chew on a duck neck, it doesn't just chew, come off, swallow it down. They're literally like swinging it around out there while they're chewing on it. So I think it's just to basically sort of like, hey, right, I'm going to focus just on this and bugger everybody else kind of thing. But I think that is why. But yeah, guaranteed he's going to drag it around the kitchen. And I'm just like, I'm not placing that in a fancy bowl for you to just with it anyway.
No, stuff like that now, I have to give it her outside because it just gets all over my kitchen.
I know. And then you've got to clean everything. But where we live as well at the minute, it is super waterlogged everywhere. Like we literally, there's floods all around. And so if I kick him outside to eat, he'd just come in like black bright. So he has to eat in the kitchen. And I have to deal with the mess. But hey ho. It's part of what we do. It's part of what we do.
That's it.
Yeah. So touching on that, I do think one of the downsides of social media is the negative comments. But I think one way that we can combat this is to stay within our own supportive community and just focus on your own journey. And then, fair enough, pull information, lean on other people for support and things like that. But don't pay any attention to what anyone else is doing, because your dog might have particular health issues, or they might, not all dogs get on with raw food anyway. So you might have to feed a home cooked diet, or you might just prefer to feed a home cooked diet and that kind of thing. Or you might just only be able to afford kibble with some fish put on the top, which is completely fine. And nobody should try and make people feel bad if that is what kind of position they are in. So I think if you just focus on your own journey and take it one step at a time, because social media can be really ugly at times. But thankfully, I haven't had any experiences that reflect that. And it doesn't sound like you have either.
No, I think it's been really positive for me. That's why I'm still there.
Well, yeah, that's good. That's good. And now you've got 2 dogs who have accounts each.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, what are your plans for the future for your natural journey? Like, does it go further than fresh food, or do you have kind of goals that you've got for Maggie and Rosie, stages you want to get to, or anything like that? Or are you happy where you are and you're just going to plod on?
I think with Rosie, for the time being, she's pretty good where she is right now. She's absolutely loving her food. If she could eat it a little bit quicker, that would be great. Leave the kitchen door open and it's freezing in the living room. But with Maggie, keep slowly introducing the fresh food. Keep on top of it, and I think that keeping the consistency up to make her realise that it is good food.
Yeah,
you can't have McDonald's all the time.
She'll get there, bless her. She's probably just trying to put her foot down a bit.
Oh yeah, she's stubborn. Yeah, definitely stubborn. And she doesn't like treats either, Maggie. Like she eat like natural treats, like a bone or something, but she's not bothered about training treats or anything like that. And I think that's because before we had her, she'd never had treats before. So that's something that we're trying to progress as well, is get some.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah.
So will she eat like the rabbit ears and things like that, or is it? Yeah,
things like that. The smellier the better.
Yeah.
She loves anything that's hairy. But like little training,
little tidbits. She's not bothered.
No.
Yeah, you see, my dogs love the little training treats and things, but I can't give them, like, I can give them rabbit ears and I can give them chicken feet, but anything bigger or longer lasting, and there's just all hell breaks loose in the house, because they each want each other's chew. So they've
got the same.
They've got the same.
Yeah.
They've always got the same. They each want each other's, but they don't want the other one to have theirs either. So they both want both chews. And I mean, Barney will chew his and he will eat his through, but Boris will carry it round for days and literally sort of like become attached to it like it's a part of him. And it just causes too much stress for the dogs and for everybody else in the house. So we don't have treats like that.
No, I get it. But Maggie will eat her treat really, really quickly. And then Rosie will take ages chewing hers. Like she'll lick it and chew a little bit off it and keep looking at it like, oh, this is really nice. So Maggie's finished hers and is like, why is she still going? She thinks she's had a bigger one or a better one or an extra one.
Oh,
like, you're reading, you've just eaten it.
Oh, that's good that she takes the time though, because then she's getting the mental enrichment from it as well.
Well, yeah, it keeps her quiet. Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
good.
that's good. Good. Okay, so thank you, Megan, for joining us on the podcast today. It's been lovely chatting with you and getting to know about your fresh feeding journey. So thanks for sharing. Hopefully you will be able to make progress with Maggie in the future and Rosie keeps on eating like she is. If you ever come across anything new or you have changes to your story and you're happy to share them, we would always be happy to have you back.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
No, it's been wonderful. Thank you for being our first guest on the show.
My pleasure.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another great episode of the My Dog Made Me Do It Naturally podcast. Don't forget to check out the caption for any links discussed here today. And please, if you enjoyed the show, follow along and listen for free on your favourite podcast app. If you have any questions or would like to share your story, feel free to email me at mydogmademedoitnaturally@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Purpose of this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted as advice from a veterinarian or other professional. It does not form a client relationship with me, the host, or any guest speakers, and any information is not intended to and does not diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. And my guests express our own views, thoughts and opinions as individuals, and the podcast neither endorses or opposes the views, products or services discussed here. If your pet is ill, always seek advice from your veterinarian. I am not a veterinarian and I do not treat disease or offer medical advice.